Welcome to the Genealogy Happy Hour, a place where new family historians can learn to document their family histories and celebrate their new discoveries. I'm Amy.
And I'm Penny, and we're here to help you discover your family tree from the beginning.
Welcome to episode 19. Today, Penny and I will be discussing how to write up your research results, whether it's in a compiled genealogy, family stories, or even a family photo collection with the information that you've collected in your research. But first, we have got a lot of catching up to do. We've taken a few months off, haven't we?
We certainly have. You mostly. So Amy has been out there really involved in her genealogy education. She did a couple classes.
I did. I went to the Institute for Genealogical and Historical Research in Birmingham, Alabama. This was the last year for IGHR in Birmingham, my second time to attend, and I took Tom Jones' writing class. And then in July, I went to Pittsburgh to the Genealogical Research Institute in Pittsburgh, and I took a class on writing arguments, proof arguments.
Okay, so if anybody knows about writing, it's you.
Yes, yes, I guess
at this
that
point
would be me.
Okay, and then
you took a cruise.
I did.
Right.
I took a cruise. We did a family trip to Russia and Finland and several Scandinavian countries, which was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. A Baltic cruise.
A Baltic cruise. It was wonderful.
I'm jealous. I want to do that someday.
But the big news, and what mostly has been prohibiting our podcasting on a regular schedule, is Amy's new genealogical job.
That's not. We've been busy this summer.
I like to blame this all on Amy.
I had kids I had out of school. I got to get kids back in school. But
you do have a full-time job now.
I do have a full-time job, yes, as a forensic genealogist.
Which is great.
It's wonderful. I love it.
I love it.
I love to be able to work full-time as a genealogist, and so it's great. But it does take a lot of time.
It does.
So, yes, and I still have 3 children at home, so it's a handful.
Whatever.
Yeah. So I'm not cruising everywhere.
So we're gonna be better. We're gonna be better now that we've got ourselves organized a little bit. So anyway, this episode is about writing, and of course we have to mention our wine choice. And this is a wine Amy's had at one of her trips.
I did. I had this out. I was recently in San Diego on business, and went to a restaurant and tried this. And I have not had Rieslings in a long time, and I think we haven't even reviewed a Riesling. So,
I don't think so.
But this was very good. If I'm drinking white wine, I'm usually drinking Chardonnay, and you like your Pinot Grigio, right? So, but this Riesling it wasn't too sweet. I kind of have this preconceived ideas of Rieslings being sweet, and it wasn't at all. So that's why I'm recommending it this time. It's called Two Princes, and it's a sort of a peachy
citrus.
Right, peachy citrus. Right, peachy citrus. Not too sweet. It's an off-dry wine, so it's called Two Princes.
Sounds great.
So, and we'll have a picture of it on the website. So,
it sounds great.
Recommend it.
All right. Okay, so let's get into writing our family history. So there's a lot of different options, and sometimes writing your family history sounds so daunting. It's like, I have 600 people in my tree. I can't possibly write all this down. And
so it's kind of like the same way when you focus on your research. You focus your research on one particular family, maybe 1 or 2 people at a time, one line, and then that's the way you're going to write.
Right. I will take an example because just writing a family story to me is just scary. I'll just say it. It's scary.
It is. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
So if I take one little fact and say, okay, I'm just going to write a short narrative about this fact. And my example is a relative or ancestor of mine, Grace Estelle Curtis, and I think I've talked about her before or blogged about her, and her birthday is my birthday, December 27th, but she was born in 1867, not my year, which was 19. But my grandmother had written down on a paper that she was born 6 a.m. on a rainy day. So I thought, that sounds, it's not going to be that it was a dark and stormy night when, Grace Estelle Curtis was born. It would be and I don't know, I'm guessing it's a gray and gloomy, rainy morning when Estelle finally burst into the world, and that's really bad.
But it's interesting that fact was written in there, not only the time, but also the weather conditions.
Yeah. And I was really hoping to prove that fact by looking in the newspapers, and I can't find a single newspaper from the Grafton, Ohio area for that time. The newspapers I find in that area are always on a Thursday, not on the day she was born. They didn't have the weather listed, so I'm going to have to... if I want to prove that, I'm going to have to look a little deeper. But to me, that's not really a fact that needs proving, the rainy day.
John Coletta would love that because John Coletta always brings the weather into everything that he writes.
Right.
And so,
So, and did her mother, who is Adeline, which I love that name, Adeline Preston, was she arthritic at a young age? Did she feel the weather in her bones? Yeah. Did the weather, did that have a thing to bring on the birth that particular morning? Yeah. And I know this was Adeline's fourth child. She was 24 years old, so was it an easy birth? And I can make up this stuff in my narrative. I could say, this was a quick birth. This is her fourth kid. I can kind of generalize what I think happened, or as one of our readers has said, kind of feel your ancestors and feel like if that's what you're writing, are you doing their story justice, and do you think that's correct, and not make up too much into it? But I could write a whole little blurb on that day that Grace Estelle Curtis was born and what she would eventually see in her life, and give little blips of what would be to come, and just leave it at that. But if that's too much for you and you don't want to go into the whole narrative thing, you can just write down the facts.
Absolutely.
Just the facts of your ancestor.
Often writing down the facts, taking all of your research piece by piece, looking at it, and then writing down what you see in that is often a really good way for you to find holes in your research. What haven't I found yet? What haven't I proven yet? Or I need to go look for, like you said, look in the newspapers and see if there's anything during this time period that my great-grandparents got married, what was happening in the community, and start pulling in that social history. Like you said, you could, it was a rainy night. Apparently one of your ancestor wrote that down.
Right.
So what else was happening in that community at that time period?
Yeah.
Was there so much rain? Was it torrential rain for days and days that there was flooding?
Could have been, right.
So, and even if they only have weekly newspapers, look the week before and the week after, and then kind of maybe gauge an idea of what happened then that week. So yeah,
and a lot of times your computer program, whatever it is you use, I use Roots Magic, will do a narrative for you with whatever facts and notes you have put in. You can do a report. I can't remember what the thing is on Roots Magic, but there is a report where it'll formulate all your facts into sentences, so you don't even have to do any of the work. It'll do it all for you.
Right. Or at least that's a good place to start. Look at the report that the software kicks out, and then build on that. That's right. Absolutely. Because the bottom line is, you've done all this research, but if you don't write it up, your children, your grandchildren, your descendants aren't going to ever know about your research, or you have to make it interesting for other people, especially who aren't genealogists, who aren't all excited about the document that you just found, but they're going to be interested in the story that you tell with those documents.
Right. So. One of our friends, Judy, has a blog, Legends of the Family, and she started off with it, and I guess this is a good example of writing. She didn't want to do this a long time ago. And, she just kind of mentioned, a blog would be nice. And she talked about it for at least a year, I think, before she really decided, okay, I'm going to do this blog. And then once she got into it, it was like every 2 weeks or something. And I think now it's once a month. But she has had so many postings, and she has taken, her focus was I think it was revolutionary.
It started out, yes.
Yeah, started out as ancestors who were in the Revolutionary War. And it's expanded to almost any ancestor's history now, and, not just direct ancestors, and she just does such great research, and she says she has more fun looking up what has happened during that time period of her ancestor, and things. So that's a whole different route you could go as well.
Right. What she does is she takes that ancestor who was in the Revolution. She finds out what company they were in, and then she tries to find out what battles that company was in, and then she talks about the battles, and she talks about where they were from and that community. So she really brings in sort of the social history, usually military history, surrounded that ancestor. Right. It's not the ancestor's story as much as it is probably what that ancestor experienced in some way. So, which is
she does such a great job bringing that all together.
That's something that we all should do more of. It's not just look for the documents that prove our ancestor was born, was married, and died, but look at the community around our ancestor. Look at those newspapers like you're doing, and then pull that social history into it.
Right. That's what makes for a good tale. Another thing you had mentioned was a photo book or something. So, and I know a lot of people are scrapbookers, and you do photo books with your everyday things. But if you take your the photos that you have from your ancestors and incorporate the story and do a photo book, you can do it maybe not as involved as the other ones, maybe more of just the facts kind of things with the photos, but that gives you a nice timeline with a visual.
Right. You can do like a Shutterfly book or through Ancestry. It's a third party called Alexander's My Canvas. You will actually upload your tree from or a portion of your tree from Ancestry, and then you can create a poster with your pedigree chart, or you can create a photo book and then insert as many facts as you want. And I think you can even do footnotes in there too, which of course we're going to talk a little more about citations, but bring those family photos in. That's going to create more interest, especially for your family members who aren't into genealogy, but might be interested in looking at some family photos. And then you put those facts, that research, you weave that research into the photos.
Yes, and that's also a good time to put in maps or pictures of the city that are vintage, which you can find anywhere online. Or it's crazy the amounts of things that you can find online about the city that your ancestors lived in, and incorporate all of that into that photo book.
Absolutely. Look for photos of Cincinnati, Ohio in 1850. Look for those engravings, and then you can incorporate that because that's where your ancestor was living.
And there again, in the photo books, you can do the little tiny ones. You can do a 5x7, just something quick, like one person. Like here's a quick flip through of this person's life. It doesn't have to be huge. But, at least you've knocked something out, and you can say, hey, I did this. Got one person done.
Right. Yes. I've researched this family, usually, this couple and their children completely, and that's a little book.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Here it is. And also, when you're doing that, like you just mentioned a little bit before, I was talking about the citations. We're so big on that. Putting those citations in, have an extra couple pages at the end, and make sure you footnote your facts so that people your future generations do not have to go and research all this. Like, well, how did she know that?
Right.
You've got the documentation right there in your photo book.
It's a sign of good research, and absolutely, you don't want your grandchildren to read this. I mean, there's nothing more disappointing to me than finding some information about my family that's been written up by someone in the past, and then not knowing where they got that information from. So where did they get the cemetery information, or where did they get all of this?
Yeah.
And then there's nothing there. So I have to go and do that research all over again.
Right. And the more you do this, when you find those things, you're constantly going, how do they know that?
Right.
How do they know that? Where is that? Prove it to me.
Right.
You just automatically don't believe what everybody's putting out there because they don't, unless they have their citations.
When you can't believe it because you don't know where they got it. Was this secondhand information that they got from a relative, or was it a little note that somebody wrote, or was it an actual document?
Right.
You don't know. So that's why it's important. Of course, Elizabeth Shown Mills' book, Evidence Explained, goes into great depth on how to cite your sources. And it can get complicated. However, if you at very least write some end notes, make something that says this is where I got the information from, then anyone who's reading it in the future will be able to, know that you did good research, that you were a good genealogist.
They know it's proven.
Right.
They know it's proven.
Exactly.
You just didn't make that stuff up. Right. One blogger, the armchairgenealogist.com, she has some really good blogs on writing. Hers is mostly about writing. And that's a good place to go and look and get ideas and tips and whatnot on getting your ancestors' stories written down, which is very important for future generations. And you might not think anybody in your family cares. I know my kids don't care right now, but I'm hoping that when they get older, they'll be like, wow, I'm really glad Mom did this. Or, they might not get into it until they're, had kids and in their 50s or so. And hopefully at that point I'll be able to hand everything over to them and they'll appreciate all the work I've done or am still doing, because you know how it is. We just go on and on with our genealogy research.
So self-publishing is something, if you want to self-publish, you can do it through, I think you can do it through Amazon if you want to sell the books, or someplace like Lulu, where you can either order maybe a small amount of books, 10 copies, or you can go on there and then have your relatives purchase through them, and then as they purchase, then they will create the book and send it to someone. So there are ways to self-publish that doesn't cost an arm and a leg anymore. So those are a couple.
Yeah, and so many people do that nowadays, just self-publish and put their stuff even out on Amazon or whatever if they've done that, which is really pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah. So I guess, our big thing here is write it down. Get your family story written down. And even if you have to start small with one person and one event, like the birth of your great-grandmother, do it. Just do one little thing and see how it goes. And, maybe you'll be inspired to write more and continue on, or start a blog, or write a book and be self-published.
It's very scary to start out with. Even me, I was taking 2 writing classes this summer, and when it got time to, these were a lot of hands-on classes, and it got time to, write this down, and you're looking at this blank page, and at least for me, my tendency is I want to make it perfect the very first time. And how do I take all of this information that I know and articulate that, on a page? So it can be very scary. And the answer, I think, what I came to, the conclusion was you just have to practice. And don't think that you're going to write it perfectly that first time. Just get the information down there and then start rearranging it until it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And it becomes either a good story or a logical sequence of events.
Right. Because unless you're in a class or something, we have no timetable. We can do it on our own time, and we can revise and edit as much as we want in the time that we have.
And you're probably going to find that you're going to have to go do some more research, go out and get that research done, and then come back and then continue writing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a process, but start small. Start, like you mentioned, Penny, with a couple and their children.
Right.
Grandpa and grandma, or great-grandpa and great-grandma and their children, and then go from there.
Yeah.
So.
And we would love to hear about your writing experiences. If you've done something big, done something little, never tried it but are going to, whatever. We would love to hear from you and hear what you all are doing with the information that you're researching.
Absolutely, yeah. If you have any tips, any tricks, any advice for other genealogists out there who are ready to write down their research or encouragement, that would be great.
Yeah, including us.
So
please share.
One other place that you can start is once you get this little story written, about your ancestors, is look for publications, Genealogical Society publications.
Oh, yes.
That's a great way to get that information, not only for your own family, but share it for other genealogists, especially in that community, because you might have information in there, information on neighbors, information on business partners, any other people, any of those neighbors that your ancestor was involved with could be information that someone else in that community is looking for. So look for your local societies, whether they're a county society or a state society that has a publication, and submit your work to that publication. And it'll be a good way to have some interaction with an editor.
Yeah.
Because your work can only get better when you show it to somebody else and don't take it personally, but take that constructive criticism as a positive thing to make your writing better. Yeah. So
that's always hard, though, isn't it?
It's very hard. It is.
Hard.
It is.
I would be like, hard. What do you mean you didn't like my writing?
You can't think of that. But you have to look at it from their experience at this, and you need to take that feedback, rewrite, and submit again, and your writing will be better. So yeah, for sure. So that's a good way to again get that your research out there to the public.
And I know because you're going for your certification that's very important to you. Is that, and to me, the writing is just making sure generations know their family stories.
Right.
So we have like different. I have no goal to publish, and you do have a goal to publish. Right. And I know some of you out there will have a goal to publish, and some of you won't, and we'll just be like, "Hey, I just want to write it down." So yeah, there's such a variety,
many different reasons.
A 180 aspect of writing your history.
But one thing that we all have in common is we need to write it down.
We need to write it down.
You need to document it. You need to. You have your documents. You need to write those down.
Yes,
so that everyone
and make it a story, because nobody cares about Joan was born this day, married this day, died this day. Well,
it's kind of dry.
Yeah, that's not an exciting life.
It's kind of dry. You need to take the time to look at those newspapers. Take the time to look and see what's going on in their community. What were their neighbors doing? Look at those census reports. Is everybody farmers, or was there somebody who wasn't a farmer?
Right.
Where were they living at the time?
What was farm life like back then?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
If they were the only, someone told me that ancestor in one of the census was a candy dipper. That was their occupation, candy dipper.
What is a candy dipper?
And so I was thinking, well, so who was the candy? What was the candy store? Was it a candy store? Was it a manufacturer?
Yeah.
Were there other candy dippers?
Was it up at dawn and till dusk dipping candy?
Right. So right there, you can take that occupation and start looking.
Did they have diabetes? What?
I don't know. When did they die from? Right, exactly. Right. You can look at their death certificate if they have one. What was the cause of death?
Right? Candy dipper, obese.
But you have this one little occupation that's kind of unique, and you can totally build a whole story off of that, and at the same time incorporate all this research that you have about this family.
Yes.
But why was she a candy dipper? Who did she work for? Was it a family-owned business?
Oh, no, it was a woman?
It was a woman, yeah. It was
Okay.
I think she was a teenage girl, so she was a young girl at the time. So what was going on in that community? So it was kind of cool.
That is.
So that's how you can just start make your story unique.
Yeah.
Because all our ancestors have unique stories.
Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And we just have to pull them out.
Absolutely.
And find out what they are. All right. Well, I think that's
everything?
It for this month. Right. Like to see some good writing going on.
Absolutely. And that's for me and you as well.
This is
challenging
true.
us to write.
Got to write something. Yep.
Yes, we do. We need to. So in my ProGen study group, I'm writing a lot right now.
So we're all challenged here.
Yes, but getting something published, absolutely.
All right.
All right. So go to it, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for listening. Please email us with any questions or comments at genealogyhappyhour@gmail.com.
Visit our website, www.genealogyhappyhour.com, for additional resources, books, and wines. Don't forget to drink responsibly
and never drink around genealogical documents.